Well, hello. It's time for another exciting episode of Pens in Use. This is the show where I talk about the fountain pens and inks I've been using throughout the week. And this week, we're going to do something new for the channel. So stay tuned after the writing sample. So let's dive into it. If videos like this interest you, where I talk about fountain pens, both new and old, and at all price points, I would invite you to subscribe. And I am very curious, what are your thoughts on the controversial topic coming at the end? So I won't do spoilers, I will just dive into the pens. So here we go. Alright, so these are the pens I've been using this week. I have a, well, this isn't part of it, but a Caveco Sport, a Marshal pen, a Wing Sung 698, a Parker 180, an Artisan Pen Cigaro, a Parker Frontier, a Montblanc 32, Lamy 2000, and a Parker Vector. And there's another Parker Vector here for reasons which will become clear later in the video. As always, I'll be recording this in my Cognitive Surplus Seafood Flavored Journal. So this week you got to see the Marshal pen. I actually plan to release this video next week, and whoops, I scheduled it for the wrong week, so I ended up issuing 2 videos on the same day, so whoops. But anyway, it's a cute little pen. One thing I thought was worth bringing up that I should have brought up in the video. This is a Caveco Sport. And the Marshal's a little longer, but it's not much longer. And let's just post them both. The Caveco Sport, of course, is not inked, so I won't bother comparing the writing. But, so the posted, they're about the same length. The Caveco Sport is a little wider, but a lot of similarities there. So I kind of enjoy these small pens. They're not something I would pick every day, but they're kind of fun. The ink in this pen is Parker Quink Green, which is no longer made. I actually kind of enjoy this color. It skipped a little there, but I think that was more a me problem rather than a pen problem. But just a very pretty green. My next pen was the review I actually meant to publish this week. This is it was not a review of this pen because I did this pen a year or 2 ago. This is a Wing Sung 698. Very nice pen. Has a kind of a TWSBI aesthetic to it, but yet it does its own thing. But what's kind of cool, the nib on this pen, let's see if I can get this in focus, is a Wing Sung ground to cursive italic by Palmer's Pens. Ooh, okay. Whoops, that was just my imagination. That may have been my fault. Oops, sung, not sing. So yeah, I had Palmer's Pens grind this. This is a Parker Quink. Because for now, until the bottle runs dry, this has been my review, well, my first impression ink. It's actually a really good ink. There's been a little controversy on the channel whether washable blue means it washes out of the pen well or whether it washes out of clothing well, but anyway, I like it. It's actually a really nice ink. I had some old writing that I did with this ink that kind of faded, but I haven't seen that trouble lately, so Am I imagining it, or I don't know. Ooh, there is some skippage there, though. Holy cow, that's bad. I don't remember that during my original video, but it means absolutely nothing. Chris Rep 52 contacted me to mention that, yeah, this nib isn't meant for this feed, so I should probably look at some other Wingsung pens for this nib. So I may do that. This pen was kind of lackluster, and the nib made it a bit more exciting. But, you know, if it's going to do this, I haven't written with it in a few days. I've had a busy couple of days here, and yeah. Yeah, still not writing. Okay. Win. My next pen is a Parker 180. This is an extra fine / medium. I'm going to start. Here's the medium side. Here's the extra fine side. I'm going to start with the extra fine side this time. Okay, whoops. Extra fine / medium. And then the ink I'm switching to the medium side now is Parker Quink. Purple. Which is a cartridge I honestly have not gone through very quickly. Of course, I say that, and then I look at the ink level in here, I think, okay, yeah, I guess I did kind of go through that quickly. But, anyway, no longer made. Parker Quink has really limited their colors, but I purchased several cartridges. You'll be seeing pink at the very end of this that I'm going to do an experiment with. And, yeah, the purple... Okay, it really does nothing for me, but it's a decent purple. Especially once you get to the medium-sized nib. What do I say? Alright, this is a Artisan Pen Cigaro. I reviewed it this week. This will also be Parker Quink Washable Blue. This has an Asian broad. Some people suggested that the nib is more spherical than perhaps a regular broad, but I don't know. I can't figure it out. Oops. Artisan pens. So Asian broad. And the ink is Parker Quink Washable Blue. Which kind of became my go-to ink for first impressions till the bottle runs dry. Then I'll pick up something else. But as you can see, there isn't much line variation with this nib. I mean, the pen is nice. It feels good in the hand. It writes well, but not a lot of line variation, and it's probably the nib. Then I have my Parker Frontier. I owned one of these back in college, but it was red and black, and it had a rubbery section here. So I like this a little better. I had a little controversy last time I did this. Apparently this isn't really green enough. Oh, that's a fine nib. Seriously, I was going to write medium. Glad I looked. Turquoise, a lot of people were saying has a little bit more green in it, and I don't disagree. But this is the color this ink is. And it actually reminds me of Lamy Turquoise and Monteverde Turquoise. So I think they're in good company, even though this is more of kind of a sky blue color. But, you know, the commenters were right. Turquoise jewelry definitely does have more green to it. So, you know, maybe Navajo turquoise or something would be more my speed. Alrighty, and it looks like the regular camera is frozen on the laptop, so you may not see me again, unless the preview is fooling me. But my next pen is a Montblanc 32. Yeah, it's got the snowflake, or the bird splat if you prefer that. This ink in this pen is been here a long time because this is an extra... Oops, I wrote a P. It's an extra fine nib, and it just takes a long time for this pen to run out of ink. The ink in it is Colorverse. Pale blue dot. Which is a really nice green. I will say that it actually seems to perform pretty well on this extra fine nib. I didn't expect that. But it does show off better in a broad nib. You know, I guess one question I'd have is, what are some inks that really perform best on an extra fine or a fine? I'm kind of curious about that. I generally find that inks are shown off better on the broad or the extra double broad or whatever, but there must be some that work better on the extra fine, right? All right, my penultimate pen, not penultimate Dave, but penultimate pen is a Lamy 2000. This is kind of my daily writer here at home. This year the Pelikan Stola has been my daily writer at work. For no reason other than I just thought it was something worth doing. This is a Pelikan, Edelstein, Onyx. One of these days I should do a video where I compare this to Pelikan Brilliant Black, but not today. I've got another topic for today. Overall, this is a nice black. And my last pen. Oh, it's not inked up. It's a Parker Vector, though. Parker Vector bought recently. Has a date code on it that IIT. I should look that up. Okay, so my source only stops at 2011, so I may be a little off here. I-IT, you know, IT, according to my source, is 1995. But here's something interesting. A viewer sent me, so it's going to be on the left here, or on the bottom, I guess, an older Parker Vector with a minor difference. And by the way, the date code on this one which was made in the USA, is really hard to read on camera, so let me put it down here. IF? IT? I don't know what it is. Put it back like 1995. But anyway, we're going to compare these. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Okay, so this is not the nice scale that I use at work. with my students. I have nice digital scales. This one is MERP. Can I say MERP? Those read to the 100th of a gram. This one does not. But let's just put... I'm not going to put the whole pen on because the one I was given is missing some essential parts. So let's put the cap of the original on here. 3 grams. Now let's put the cap of the one I own on. Okay, 3 grams. That was boring. Didn't know what would happen there. Let's put the barrel of the old-fashioned version on. 4 grams. I'm kind of scared this is going to say 4 grams. It does. Oh, doggone it. So apparently I need a more sensitive scale, but I can tell just feeling it that the old one here on the right is a little more heavy than the one on the left. The other thing I can really tell is the old one is less sharp. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take the old barrel, put it on. Yeah, I guess I could swap the nib and stuff, but I'm not going to. And, ew. So, the clip is a little loose in this old one, whereas in the new one, it's rock solid. The old one has a something in this finial. The new one, it's fallen out. But you know what? We're going to go with it. So let's just see here. Okay, new one with all the old parts. 11 grams. I am just curious. If I do the new one with all the new parts, I'm just curious if it's going to be the same. Yep, it is. Okay. So that was... Bringing out the scale from the kitchen was a total waste of time. But what I'm curious about... Yeah, that does feel better to hold than the other version. So, but I don't know. Do I prefer the other cap? Can you tell that I have 2 versions of the cap? So, I don't know. Something to think about. Anyway, I'm going to put the old version here. What I'm going to put in it is Parker Quink Pink. Now, you might remember a couple of weeks ago I had Parker Quink Pink, and I mentioned how the cartridges had evaporated a lot. So I'm opening it up, grabbing a random cartridge, throwing the rest of it onto my coffee table to deal with later. And yeah, lots of air in that. So here's what I'm going to do. Uncap it, open it up, pull out the converter, set it aside. I'm going to puncture it upside down. Now it's open. But what I have here, I'm a science teacher. I have access to distilled water. I'm going to inject some distilled water in here. Whoops, not enough to make a mess, I said to myself, but then I made a mess. And I'm going to pop this puppy onto the nib, screw it in, wait a minute, and we'll see what we can do. Alright, so not too much long later, we'll go Parker Vector. This is a fine nib. And we have Parker Quink Pink. I feel like I'm writing kind of messy today. And when I look across the page, I'm like, Yeah, you are rating kind of messy. I don't know what's up, but whatever. Now, I don't have Parker Quink Pink here, but I do have it here. So let's just zoom in. So let's compare rehydrated Parker Quink Pink with what I did on November 6th. All right, let's be honest. Yes, there's a difference, but it's really not a lot of a difference. So, I know, I'm kind of glad I tried that. That was fun. Okay, if people in authority practicing sexual abuse is a topic that's difficult for you, this would be a good time to stop. I wavered back and forth about whether I wanted to actually do this part of the video or not, but I decided it was worth including, so here I am. So stop now if this kind of topic disturbs you. So I've got a little script here. I'm not reading from it, but it is an outline to keep me on task and on topic. So what I want to talk about is a book. It's called Roman Collar Crime. It's by Charles A. Utter. The full title of the book is Roman Collar Crime: Violated, the Transgressions of a Small Town Priest. The book actually relates to the St. Mary's School in a town near me. It's a very small town, much smaller than mine. It's New England. And I'll just be honest, many small towns in North Dakota used to have a private Catholic high school. Mine is one of the few that did not. New England is one of them. The high school closed in 1992. The elementary closed in 1997. Nowadays, if you visit New England, the gym and the elementary school are now part of the state women's prison. Yeah, it was put in New England, of all places. Our current governor, Doug Burgum, is looking at moving that women's prison to somewhere less remote because, honestly, most of the women that are in this women's prison are not from this area. They're from further east, so he'd like to put it somewhere more central so that, family can actually visit the women in prison. Which you're thinking, okay, they're in prison, why are we being nice to them? But the reason we're being nice to them is we're trying to give them an option of, hey, you're part of a larger community, you're part of a family. There's a reason you want to do better for yourself. It's kind of hard to do in New England. Also in New England, they have to travel for dentists, for medical care, for just about everything. Because New England is... it's not as far off the beaten path as my town, but it's pretty far off the beaten path. So, it's a problem. So he is looking at moving the prison to somewhere less remote. Now, what the book does is it fictionalizes a real person in a real town. And some changes. Instead of New England, he calls it New London. All the surrounding towns, including mine, because mine gets mentioned, keep their names. Oops, I'm not changing pages here. Come on. Come on. Oh. Apparently I let the thing fall asleep. The priest in question was Father Eugene Lamaris. In the book, he becomes Father Joseph Brennan. And of course, the names of businesses and people in the book, victims as well as villains, have all been changed. The book covers the time of Father Brennan. which was basically 1953 to 1973. He was there for a long time. He became an institution in New England. I found it interesting that most of the links I found, even from the church itself in question, never actually mention his name. The school started as both a residential and a boarding school. And actually, the enrollment at the school peaked between the 1950s and 1970s during this man's time. So I think you can already see there's an issue there. He recruited heavily. He recruited both students and coaches. And one of the concerns and one of the sore spots a lot of private schools have here in North Dakota is, well, you can just recruit your students. He really did. And he recruited coaches. And private schools, you attend a private school by choice. You attend a public school because, that's where I live. There's an article I've linked below. It's on Coach Earhart. He was recruited in 1957. And he ended up serving for 3 years as a coach at St. Mary's School. He ended up as a coach of the New England Patriots for 1978 to 1981. And later on, he helped the New York Giants and Pittsburgh Steelers to go on to Super Bowl wins. But he got his start in New England, North Dakota. And if you've been through New England, and I've got the driving videos down below, there's not a lot there. Maybe there was more in the 1950s, but yeah, it's pretty darn small. And he was very successful in New England. And that really is part of the story of Father Brennan's success. When a sports program is unsuccessful, it upsets people. We don't get people running for school board here because, I wish your ACT scores were a little higher. No, you get people running for school board here because, I wish your football program was more successful. You get people running because they're upset about sports. Nobody gives a rip about academics because, what's the important thing? It's not what you're going to do with the rest of your life. It's high school sports scores. So, anyway, I included an article on, it's a vintage article about Beach, North Dakota, playing St. Mary's. Now, the book itself actually delves into the dark side of this priest and, all of his enablers. I'm not Catholic, so I can't really speak for the influence of a Catholic priest on his community because I don't care what the Catholic priest here thinks. I've met him. I've talked to him a few times. He seems like a nice guy, but I'm never going to attend his church. I don't care what he thinks of me or what I do because it doesn't matter. But, and of course, times have changed a bit since the 1950s and the 1970s. But I don't care what some priest or preacher or pastor or whatever you call him in this town thinks of me. It's not important. But maybe back then it was. And, if you're part of a Catholic community, if you're part of a Catholic school, and this priest runs your Catholic school, he's got a little bit more power over you. And it's kind of scary to think how much power they actually had, and maybe still have. And, on a tangential note, I'm going to just notice the case of Detective Dennis Ryan, who now is 86, maybe 88. I can't remember when I read this article. But anyway, late 80s. He was a detective in Australia back in the 1970s, and he was investigating a Monsignor John Day, who was a pedophile. And the police department said, stop investigating him. They ordered him to stop investigating him. Of course, he said, bullshit, and it didn't matter. So he ended up resigning the police force and really struggled with, his marriage, his life, his employment for the rest of his life. And now at 86, finally, the police department said, whoops, we should have supported you back then in the 1970s, but no, we decided that supporting the Catholic Church was more important than any kids being abused. So, yeah, sorry about that. Here's some compensation for your retirement. Hope you die soon. And, so he is finally getting compensation, but at his age, for how much longer? And does that really make up for being told to abandon the investigation and being pressured to do so to the point that you resign for the police force? I kind of don't think so. But see, that's evidence of this story. The church as an institution was more important than the individuals. And in this book, air quotes, Father Brennan was not a pedophile. Yay. He did cover for a few instances of it, but he was not himself a pedophile. But he did enjoy women. You know, who doesn't? But unless you're taking a vow for celibacy or something, or you have a position of authority. So he took advantage of many women in New London from high school age on up. According to the book, he was very controlling of both his parish and his students. He had spies, oh, you're dating somebody, you're going steady, and it's a Protestant. What if the student's dating somebody from the, gasp, public school? In the book, he was very good at manipulating women. He was very good at saying, it's very hard for a priest to be celibate. You're really serving God if you serve my physical needs. And you would think somebody would have said something, but the success of his school, because it was a mighty school between the 50s and 70s during his tenure there, both athletically and in terms of enrollment and in terms of, in fact, the church still brags about this, the number of people who decided to take a vocation in the Catholic Church. He was really insulated from church oversight. The book suggests he had some blackmail material over the local bishop in Bismarck, because it suggests that the local bishop was a homosexual. And of course, at the time when all this takes place, that would have been a small problem. Okay, yeah, probably be still a small problem in the Catholic Church, because the Catholics haven't quite figured out that homosexuality is a thing and it's part of normal human expression. But, whatever. Back then it would have been a huge deal. So, he had that kind of pull over the bishop, according to the book. A lot of financial shenanigans, money invested in strange places. He was able to use this money to hire coaches and say, hey, I'll just offer you a ridiculous salary if you'll come to my school. He was able to buy people off. He was able to offer people employment. And the book even suggests that he offered drugs to athletes at school. Now, some elements of this book are very fictionalized. There is a basis in reality. This is a real man, and I'll get to that in a bit. Well, I'll get to that right now. What the heck? First of all, he really was born in Sentinel Butte. Second of all, his dad died when he was very young. Third of all, they moved to Golva. But the book talks about him having sex with his mother when he was a teenager, or I guess I didn't write down what age he was, but I'm guessing teenager. There's no evidence for that. I did not find, not that it doesn't exist, but I didn't find any evidence that he took advantage of the girls in Golva after he moved there. I could not find a reference for Bubby, who was the devil that convinced him to do the things he did and provided him justification for it. So I don't know if that's a real thing. I did find, just like in the book, that he died in Colorado, but I could not find, like the book says, that he was shot by a former parishioner from New England when he was in Colorado. So I'm left with the question of how much of it is true. Now, I will say it's a very readable book. And the phrasing and the words used in the church bulletins that are quoted at the beginnings of a lot of the chapters, those very much ring true. And I have heard of this guy. People from New England or who are associated with New England have talked about him. So I know he had a big influence in New England. You know, were all the details true? I don't know. I also am not clear what Charles Utter's connection was with New England. Now, ultimately, I guess the big lessons to take away here are there's a really huge danger if you're going to let immoral people have power. This was an immoral man, and he had power over a town for 20 years. And I would love to say that, okay, that's just fiction, but we all know that's not true because we all know stories of priests or teachers or other people who have gotten that power and have gotten away with awful, awful things just because of people protecting them. People like this have their little toadies who are going to defend them. He was defended by physical violence, by threats, by blackmail, whatever. And we also know for a fact, sometimes victims of these crimes stay silent. And, you know, the reasons why they stay silent are widely varied. I don't want to get into that too deeply, but yes, they're widely varied. And sadly, all too often are understandable. And honestly, many of the people who know about these things stay silent, whether it's, I gotta protect the church, or whether it's, I don't want to get wrapped up in this, I don't want to get entangled in this at all. Whatever the reason, a lot of people who know about these kind of crimes stay silent. And I think one of the things that can be really scary is when you have a whole institution, like the Catholic Church, arrayed against you. Especially when this institution can say, you will be excommunicated. You will go to hell if you talk against us. But some of the other lessons that come in here are persistence does pay off. You know, enough people spoke up and said, hey, this guy's got to go. And he went, finally. Even after he'd been there for so long. And I think the final lesson, I don't care what label you put on people. A lot of these labels are meaningless. Well, he's a Christian. So what? Does not tell a thing about his moral character. Well, he's a priest. So what? Doesn't tell a thing about his moral character. You know, I think we're becoming more aware in this modern era that the specific label that's put on people means absolutely nothing. So anyway, it is a very readable book. It's infuriating at times, and at times you're thinking, really? But then I read about real life cases, and of course this is a real life case, and I've got access to more information than probably most of you do about this specific case, and just like, scary, but a lot of it does ring true. Now, this is not a slam against the Catholic Church. This is a slam against one particular priest in the Catholic Church. If I'm going to hold the Catholic Church responsible for anything, I think it would be protecting the institution over dealing with specific members of the institution and victims. And I'm sorry to say I can't hold the Catholic Church uniquely responsible for that, because there are a lot of schools, a lot of other institutions that have been guilty of the exact same thing. That does not excuse anything the Catholic Church did, but I think it's a more full representation of what they did. And sad to say, success ends up covering a lot of sins. And it's really sad to say that sometimes the success is on totally superficial, unimportant things like sports. And that's a big part of why this guy got away with what he did for so long, is because, hey, he's got a good football program going on. So, I guess I would just close by saying question authority. I don't care if it's religious or secular. I don't care what the authority is. What's your basis for following them? What are they actually doing? What are they hiding? What are their evils? Question it. And yeah, I would say this book is worth reading. It is, the author is part of a project to expose these kind of sins within the Catholic Church and help the victims of them. And I say good for him. There has been some talk that this book could become a TV series, and I'm a little more uncomfortable with that, and I'll tell you why. My fear is the focus will be on the salacious details rather than on the evils of the institution. It could too easily turn into a soap opera rather than a, hey, here's something we got to do. We got to expose, even if it's within our own institution. And I'll just close something personal. I worked with a teacher for a while. I've never before or since gone to the principal about a teacher. This specific teacher, I did. Now, I've never heard whether this teacher actually did anything truly horrifying with one of the students. But, boy, it was so creepy the way to watch this guy with, especially girls in his classes. And, man, all my alarm bells were ringing, and I was glad this teacher did not last long in our school. Now, the teacher was not fired. And I'm not going to tell you what school I was at when this all happened, but I will say this teacher went on to another school where concerns were also raised about this teacher. They're out there. They're not just in the Catholic priesthood. They are everywhere. Anybody who has authority over other people, that's always a risk that you have. And if you're one of those people that's in authority, you've got to be extra special careful to make sure that there are no questions about your behavior. Because you never know what's going to happen. Now, sometimes things are taken wrong, and sometimes things really are wrong. So pay attention to those gut feelings. I would so much rather be wrong than say, okay, I'm just being paranoid here, and find out something was really going on there that I could have stopped and didn't. So, I'm going to leave you there. This was a very heavy topic, and so if you stuck with me to this point, I want to thank you, and just please ask you to be vigilant and protect those people. So thank you for watching. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.